Hey friends, welcome back to Onward. Today's episode is going to be part one of a series on my eating disorder. This is episode one, my story. And before we get into it, I just want to give a big trigger warning. If anyone is in recovery or is suffering with eating disorder and can easily be triggered, I wouldn't recommend listening to this. We're not going to give any specific numbers, of course, or anything like that. But hearing someone else's story can be triggering, and I just want to be mindful and cautious of that and considerate to those who are struggling as well, because this is hard. I also want this to help destigmatize eating disorders and for you guys to remember just that you're not alone and there's plenty out there struggling like you, going through it. And if you need someone to talk to, please feel free to reach out. There's helplines, there's people like me that are willing to talk. You know, don't be shy. Eating disorders thrive in secrecy, so try and be as open as possible. The format today is going to be a little bit different because I actually wrote out a story because I just wanted to make sure I got as much detail in as possible from what I remembered, whereas if I just went off the cuff and went off my head, I'd probably end up forgetting a couple of things. But it's not going to be as advicey today. This is kind of just going to be like a little story time and just a little relatability to help, like I said, destigmatize some of it. Anyways, guys, let's just get right into it. Here we go. This is episode one, my story. On February 8th, 2023, I was put in residential for anorexia, bulimia, and binge eating disorder. But the story begins long before then. The story begins when I was 5 years old. When I was 5, I first became aware of my body. I remember being on a vacation with family, friends in Martha's Vineyard, which I highly recommend everyone visits because it is not a tainted place despite this memory, and I was wearing a bikini. I noticed my stomach poked out further than the other girls, but I didn't know why. And when we all sat together on the giant Adirondack chairs, I saw I took up more space. Nothing compelled me to do anything, but maybe that was just because I was so young and naive that I didn't know how to do anything at the time. I also danced a lot when I was little, and I did gymnastics, and God, they used to take our measurements for costumes. First of all, I feel like this should have been done by a parent, not an old man, but anyways, aside from all the creepiness, it also should have been done in private and maybe not have happened at all. They'd line us up like literal pigs to the slaughter and read aloud our body measurements for all to hear. My body would tremble with fear before I got up there, knowing that I'd be a bit heavier than the other girls, and that scared me. I didn't know why, but I knew it was inherently wrong at just 5 years old. All the people I idolized and saw on the TV were skinny, so that was what I felt I needed to be. There was one mold, one look, despite the fact that everyone's body is different. Frankly, not much has changed at all, and it's the same way today, but it was the early 2000s back then, so everyone and their mother was dieting, including mine. I grew up surrounded by the narrative that people like my dad and brother were lucky because they had fast metabolisms. Ooh, pardon me, the mic just fell. I grew up surrounded by the narrative that people like my dad and brother were lucky because they had fast metabolisms, so they could eat essentially whatever they wanted. And even me, a mere 7 or 8-year-old, was lucky because I was young and, quote, calories don't count when you're young. While that may seem a bit comforting to some, all it did was teach me that calories were the enemy and one day would all catch up to me as I grew older and my metabolism slowed. Still though, I was young enough to not totally understand restriction and thus was safe from the clutches of ED for some time. I was a really active kid when I was younger. In addition to dance and gymnastics, I did all the sports, but I remember doing gymnastics was just really ironic for me because I was totally clumsy and falling on my ass all the time. But I do remember how body and self-conscious I felt in those damn leotards. It was the same for dance, They were just so exposing for some reason, and just not good for little children's self-esteem, I don't think. Despite this, I have some of the fondest memories here, I just want to say, of going down to the cafe and getting a giant sandwich or one of those strawberry shortcake ice cream bars. Those are my absolute favorites. And it would just make me so happy, and I think it's just sweet and interesting at the same time how the two extremes coexisted at once. They still do now, where I can enjoy food and be happy, but also be petrified at the same time. Or at least could have been. Anyways, I have a really vivid memory of changing with other girls for the first time, and 3 things stand out to me and are just ingrained in my mind from that day. So, 1, some girls started wearing training bras, and I was gutted instantly. Isn't it just kind of weird that I was so young and concerned about that? Freaky deaky is what I have to say when you think about it. But moving on, actually, not moving on. I feel like this relates a lot to my body dysmorphia today because I don't really have large boobs, like, at all. Like, an A is small, is big sometimes, and that's okay. But without being able to feel sexy or without being able to feel pretty or hot or anything like that, it does lead me to feel that my body is the only thing that I have to show for myself, and it's the only way that I can, fit that stereotype of what's objectively hot nowadays, which is just total bullcrap, and I know that. And it's disturbing, and it's created by pedophilic men who just want money. Let's be real here. But I still let it affect me, and I know it affects so many others, and that's not to say that we're stupid or that we're feeding into anything, because the world is built against people like us, We can't put a pressure on ourselves to try and avoid it, but we can put a pressure on ourselves to try and see through it and simply better ourselves. I kind of forget where I was going. I'm going to have to find my page. Give me a sec. But one thing that I've been doing to remedy this and try and be kinder to myself and break that mold and that vision of what the world has told me is pretty is I try and compliment myself before I look in the mirror. Now let me tell you, do I necessarily believe what I'm saying? I do. Nowadays I do, and I didn't initially. It's a fake it till you make it type situation, And I just want you to know that it's okay to not feel like the things people say about you are genuine, the compliments you're receiving are genuine, but people aren't wasting their breath. They're not lying to you. Would you do that to someone else? No. It's a waste of your time. It's two-faced, So why would someone else do it to you? The world's not out to get you. The world's not out to try and make you fatter, That's just all in your head. It's the ED talking to you, I promise. Anyways, moving on. I remember where I was. I so vividly remember when we all changed into our jerseys. I could see some of the other girls' ribs. I wasn't looking around like a perv, but I was looking up as I was changing, And I looked down at my own body, and I didn't even know that was possible. That was my first alert that something was seriously different about me and seriously wrong with it. I actually ran into the bathroom stall to finish changing because I was so embarrassed. The whole game I couldn't shake this icky feeling about myself. I didn't like it. But still, I couldn't do anything about it. Fast forwarding to middle school, this is when everything began going downhill. I was a really big tomboy growing up. There's the most hilarious, egregious pictures of me in all plaid, whatever. I wore a jumpsuit to... I'm not going to share that given the state of the world we live in. I don't feel safe. Anyways, I was a really big tomboy growing up, and this made me a great target for bullies. I wore a lot of baggy clothes, and not just that, but I literally only shopped in the men's section or the boys section at Dick's and Children's Place shop. It was a very interesting mix of highlighter yellow and weird khaki chino shorts, Anyways, one day my mom said I should stop hiding my body in these clothes. The thing was, though, I never said I was hiding my body. This only left me to assume that my body was something worth of hiding, that it was ugly and dirty, and so obviously I shouldn't have wanted people to see it. Though I doubt this was her intended message, it still cut deep. I don't want to say that my mom seems... I just want to say that my mom seems like the villain in a lot of this sometimes, but the truth is she's been one of my biggest supporters in recovery, and I'm so grateful to have her because I know not everyone has such immediate support around them, and she didn't always start so understanding. She literally read books and joined Facebook groups, and I truly saw her put in the effort over time. And so I just want to say to anyone that has a parent out there that might not be so receptive that there is hope for them to get better. And like I said, there's other places to reach out to if you don't have the immediate support. But getting back into it, my mom is a pretty cool lady, but she wasn't when she made comments like that. As I began wearing more girly clothes, my body became increasingly more exposed naturally. I really remember my first time going to a Brandy Melville, of all places, of course, and I got some crop tops, but was genuinely scared of how it would look on me compared to the models I saw outside. I couldn't stop comparing myself. Whether it be girls at school or in the store or online, I looked at the others' quote-unquote perfect bodies to see what was wrong with mine. Of course, nothing was wrong with mine, but I saw that my arms and thighs were too thick, or my rib cage was too wide, and my belly too big, and so I was the problem. This is when restriction began. I fell into my fair share of friend drama through 7th and 8th grade, and while the problem was I was just choosing not the greatest people to hang out with, I thought maybe the reason I was berated and left out was because of how I looked. As dumb as it sounds, I was just naive, and I don't want to be rude to that younger version of myself. I considered it a fact, and I just didn't know any better. My nanny used to pack my lunch most days, and rather than having it myself, I would usually give it to someone else. I hated that I was wasting food, but my desire for thinness was stronger. Some days I would just ask her plainly not to pack anything and say that I would just get a cookie or a bag of chips, which obviously isn't enough for anyone, not even a little toddler. These These patterns continued until COVID hit, and I grew happy with my progress until it plateaued. Lockdown was the perfect opportunity to push my methods and discover new behaviors. I slept in more, cutting out breakfast. Then, as I told my family I desired to eat healthier, I was praised. This only fueled me further. The fact I lost some weight was something to be celebrated to them, and getting my mom's approval satisfied a part of my younger self. Without knowing it, my family encouraged my ED for a time, pushing it further by recommending exercise. Now, I may have been sporty, but I've never said I've liked it, and I've liked exercise. Sports are fun, exercise isn't. For me, I enjoy it now. Moving on. But it was an odd to my family that I was hopping on the Peloton every day, doing YouTube workout videos in my room, the faithful Chloe Ting and all that jazz. It was admirable. I even began weightlifting, but I wasn't eating enough to build any muscle, driving my body dysmorphia even further into the ground. As lockdown ended, I experienced the worst friendship group breakup, or really what I should be calling a friendship dumping, as I was excluded and verbally assaulted for weeks, even months. It was not fun, and I am so sorry to anyone who feels like they've gone through something similar out there. Check out some of the past episodes if you want advice on that. Anyways, never had I felt so low, unwanted, and insignificant. I was a mere shell of myself. I was already battling depression by this point, but January 2021 was the lowest I'd felt till then. I self-isolated for months, and food became my best friend, and my biggest enemy. I began baking up a storm to comfort and give myself something to do. In turn, I began binging. Stuffing my face gave me a momentary, albeit false sense of happiness and freedom. But because my body dysmorphia was at a record high, I turned to purging. It quickly became my safety net for whenever I feared I ate too much. I was throwing up more than I was consuming, and my body started showing signs. I was incredibly irritable. I was never happy aside from when I was binging, and even then that gluttonous joy was clouded by what I would have to do next. I was purging several times a day most days, but eventually I got sloppy with hiding my safety net. When my dad smelled throw up in the garbage disposal, my world came crashing down. I didn't cry from shame or embarrassment or relief. I was in mourning. Mourning of the body I worked so hard for, the body I still couldn't love. That's the thing with eating disorders, guys. They're never going to be something that you love. Your body is never going to get there because your eating disorder tells you that there's always something wrong, when that is not true. Absolutely not. Every body is beautiful in its own way, and your body structure is never going to be the same as my body structure, as Kendall Jenner's body structure, as anyone else's. So stop comparing yourself and setting this unrealistic standard. It's not fair to yourself, and you're going to drive yourself crazy until it goes too far. Eating disorders just want to take and take from you until you literally die. Fast forwarding a year, my ED almost became my murderer. After a year of therapists and nutritionists who couldn't help, I convinced my parents to let me go to camp for one last summer. It was supposed to be a total escape from ED, and for a long time it actually was. I was eating more and more consistently, but about halfway through the summer, things changed. After a particularly bingy feeling dinner, I purged in the bunk bathroom, something I had previously vowed to myself I would never do. Somehow this became a routine, shamefully. I'd run from the mess hall to the bunk and on a, quote, bathroom break, purge, and return pretending nothing had happened. I guess being in a bunk with girls who were constantly in sports bras or bathing suits wasn't great for my body image. Who would have thunk? Anyways, one day I was cutting lunch and a friend came to check on me. I told her I simply didn't feel great, but she forced me to go to the infirmary subsequently. I didn't want to go. I knew it would look bad. I feared I'd be exposed. But thank God I was. Looking back, I just feel so sorry for my poor self. She was so too sick to realize how close she was to being too far gone. And that's just, I think that's the scariest thing about eating disorders. You literally don't know when it is until it is too late, and that is why it is never too early to reach out for help. You are never, quote, not sick enough. That's not a thing. If you have the thoughts, you deserve help, someone to talk to. Understand that there is no look to an eating disorder. There is no race that has a certain eating disorder or can only have eating disorders or can't have eating disorders. There is no gender that can't have them. There is no family figure who can't. There's no age. There's no restriction around it. And I can vouch for that from someone that has been through it and been through residential programs. There's absolutely no look. It comes in all shapes and sizes, all genders, all forms, all beings. Sometimes I joke that my bunny has a damn eating disorder, okay? And maybe she does. She's valid for that. Where was I? Yes. Thank God I was exposed. My heart was beating too slowly. I was dying. I was rushed to an urgent care in the middle of Maine, scared and without family. When they couldn't figure out what was wrong with me, to the hospital I went. I stayed there 4 nights, each one more miserable than the one before. I was poked, prodded, and tested routinely. I couldn't even stand up without some sort of alarm sounding. I also had to pee in a bucket, which was not fun, and I do not recommend it. My mom made it to Maine on my 2nd day. I was scared. I was scared all my progress would be for nothing. I'd have to gain it all back. After my doctors ran every test they could, they were truly stumped. There was only one theory of what could have been wrong: bulimia. When my mom asked me outright, I denied it. When doctors asked, I did the same. And I just want to say to this one particular doctor who said, and I overheard that, oh, maybe if her BMI was lower, she'd be anorexic or be, have an eating disorder. Shut your mouth. Like I said, there is no look. Everyone needs help. And that is such a damaging, horrifying thing. Even if you're not needing to go to a hospital, you're still worthy of help. You still have that eating disorder. So someone please revoke that man's license. And also, of course, it was a man. Of course. And this affected me personally, too, because when doctors asked and I denied it, it was because I was truly in denial that these were the consequences of my actions. I didn't want it to be because I never got to be, quote, thin enough. My time in the hospital was strange. I didn't feel worthy of being there. But just like anyone else there, I was diseased. My ED was a parasite which infected my brain and fed on my flesh and muscles. Seriously, though, eating disorders must be taken just as seriously as any other disease or addiction, really. If you think about it, bulimia is an addiction. As someone that's dealt with it, I'll get more into it in the later episodes, but it's not fun. And the thing is, as all this is happening, your insecurities are just getting worse and worse. You're literally so insecure about a body that you know you can't even maintain. How do you think you're going to feel about your natural one? And then somehow, you go back to your natural body one day, and it's okay. It's acceptable. And it's a beautiful feeling, and that's the truth, because you're not ever going to be happy with an eating disorder, and you probably think you're never going to be happy with your natural body. But I can tell you, with all the depression, yeah, you're never going to be happy in your sick body. But you know what? You don't know if you won't be happy in your healthy body yet. You haven't given yourself the shot, so why not at least give yourself a chance at happiness? Whew, okay. Somehow, I convinced everyone to let me have 4 more normal days of camp, and I was discharged against doctors' recommendations from the hospital. When I came home, however, it was all business. Camp was great. I was happy to see my friends, but I kept a secret where I had gone and why. I started working with an ED specialized therapist, and the truth is, no matter how much support you have to want recovery. It's the sad truth. No matter how much help you may receive, no matter who you receive it from, no matter how much your parents, your loved ones, your friends may beg you, how much you may beg yourself in some way, unless you really want it from within, it's not going to come. I know this because I didn't want it for a very long time. I looked for escapes wherever I could, but I had some real deal blinders on. One of the escapes was vacation. I thought I could physically distance myself from ED when I went on a family vacation to California, but I was sadly mistaken, and it did in fact jump into my luggage. We went to California, which is somewhere I'd wanted to go for a seriously long time. We drove down the Pacific one, and While my parents saw a shell of a human being, I was seeing some of the OC, my fave show, and just this beautiful scenery that I was enjoying, but my ED wasn't letting anyone else see that I was enjoying. And I know I wasn't enjoying it to the most that I could either, by any means, and I was robbed. I dreamt of sunny skies, catching waves, and breakfast burritos. My dream became my nightmare, though. I was miserable the entire time. I felt I needed to fit a particular LA mold, and so I just felt uncomfortable and out of place. Meals were just dreadful. The infamous In-N-Out that I'd once desired to try became a hellhole. I couldn't enjoy my favorite things. I must reiterate that there's also this assumption that people with eating disorders don't enjoy food, and that is not true. Some of us love it a little too much, and that's part of the problem. I even helped book reservations to restaurants with food that I'd really been looking forward to trying. And so, like I said, there's no look to an eating disorder. People can be struggling without trying to, having just EDs can thrive while people are still trying food or seeming enthusiastic about it. It's all about secrecy and what's going on the inside the mind. It's a mental disorder. It is not just a physical one. Obviously, back to business in my little story here. As my brain had to ruin everything, I basically ordered the same safe foods at every restaurant despite the fact that I wanted to try all these really crazy new exciting foods. You may be asking why my parents weren't doing anything, and I just want to say the truth was they were doing the most that they could at the time and with the knowledge they had. They were happy that I was keeping something down, because I had it in the past, and that was enough for them, and at the time, it was what I could handle. They didn't pressure me, they didn't push me, but they encouraged me. And that is what's necessary. Encouragement. My brother and I shared a bathroom, and after a food tour, he caught me purging. My parents had another intervention, but for the first time, my rose-colored glasses snapped, and I saw how much my ED affected others. It broke me. I was a broken person. I saw my brother cry. And yet, as my heart broke for them, it didn't break for myself. As I was slowly decaying, rotting from the inside out, I cried. I cried because I felt guilt and shame like never before. I wanted to change for them, but like I said, that's not enough. The whole trip, my parents saw a sad statue of their former exuberant daughter. I was numb. It felt like I was looking at scenes from above, never truly present. All this is to say how EDs affect those around you, and I know how hard it can be for loved ones of a victim of an eating disorder. So to any parents listening, hello! Thank you for being here. You're totally welcome here. And let me just say that communication is key. Try and be as communicative and as curious as possible. Ask questions, and that is all you can really do as a parent. And encourage. Don't push. I don't really remember after California for a while, but in summer 2022, I tasted freedom. I went on an immersion trip in Italy where I got to work on a farm for 2 weeks. There, I ate some of the freshest and most delicious food ever. I was surrounded by other cooking lovers, and I reconnected with food spiritually. By learning all food could do for me and how beautiful of a process it all was, I was encouraged to eat more. I should point out this trip was a test. My parents' alternative was a residential facility. I asked for one last chance, and I got it. I showed them I could maintain my weight that summer. As I gained natural weight back, my dumb ED thoughts got louder. But thing is, things scream when they're dying. I got that from one of my friends in res, and it's one of my favorite quotes because it is so true. And as your ED thoughts get louder, it only means that you are fighting back and getting stronger against it. So don't stop. Do not give up. Sadly, the weight gaining did not last long, though. The school year resumed, and so did my old habits. It was junior year, part 1, and pressure was at an all-time high. I've always been someone who's put a lot of academic pressure on themselves, and that trait of perfectionism is what made my ED stronger. School became a daily escape from the pressures of eating, but because I wasn't fueling my brain, I was barely learning. My grades were slipping, and my happiness with it. My parents grew tired of my morning temper tantrums, begging not to go to school. I just wanted to sulk in bed. I didn't have the energy to do anything else. I started going in late, and later, and then not at all. While I yearned for class, my body just couldn't do it. My weight dropped to a critical level, and the decision was made to send me to res. Onto the wait list I went. I am gonna make a whole episode on my time there and with the lessons I learned, as I said, but I just want to say now that I made some of the best friends there that I ever have, and I'm so grateful for them. This podcast wouldn't exist without their support and, trauma bonding and all. Hey, friends. I met some of the most amazing humans there, and I learned some of the greatest lessons that I can't wait to share. And though I made some memories of the lifetime, it is also the hardest thing I've ever done. And even a part of me accepted recovery, most of me resisted it at the time. I trusted in the process, but my mind had felt more or less in the same place since I had entered. It's a mental disorder, as I said. There's no switch to flip to turn the thoughts off, sadly. I'm scared this will be a lifelong battle, for I still struggle some days, but I try and remain hopeful. There is a light at the end of the tunnel as I look to people like Anna Archer and others who have successfully recovered. And if you need some more encouragement, find those and be wary, as there are some fake recovery accounts, but just there are people out there who really have made it, It's really, really, really awesome. There have been periods since my 4-month program where I got better at dealing with my eating disorder and my body image got better, but it truly does fluctuate with the day, just as your body fluctuates throughout the day. It all depends on external factors, unfortunately, but as long as you're working on accepting your natural self, that is the best thing you can do. The greatest advice that I can give right now is to communicate. Eating disorders thrive in secrecy. So if you want help, please expose yourself. There's a life beyond an eating disorder, and there is a life worth living where it doesn't matter how your body looks. It doesn't matter if you're tall, short, large, or small, or somewhere in the middle. You can have a life where you go out with friends and let yourself have fun. This weekend I'm going to see a movie and get dinner before, something I would never have let myself do, but I can't wait. I'm going to have the best pasta. We're going to go to a really cool Italian place, and I'm just so happy to make up for the memories I didn't let my old self have and to make my younger self proud. I regret hiding from others so much in my eating disorder. You deserve to make memories, guys. You deserve to fuel yourself no matter what you did today or what you're doing tomorrow or in a week or in 2 weeks. Don't hesitate to reach out if you need someone to talk to. I love you all.